Hey guys, today we're back out at the Lots of Vintage shop and we're talking rare four-eyed fox body Mustangs. We're talking Saleen, we're talking Dominator, we're talking Predator, and we're even going to talk about the M81 wide body. Let's dig in. When you think about buying high performance upgraded muscle cars off the lot, you think of names like Carroll Shelby, like Baldwin Motion, like Yanko. But what a lot of people don't know is that into the 80s, there were entrepreneurs like Tom Solomon, like Steve Saleen, and dealerships like Summit Ford in Kansas City that were cranking out aftermarket high performance Mustangs. And over the last 20 years, we've assembled a collection of some of the rarest and nicest examples in the world. And so we're going to talk through those today. Everything from a one of three dark blue 1986 Saleen to a black 26,000 mile 1985 Dominator GT sold new at Summit Ford, to our blue 1985 Predator GT302 R. Up there on the lift, we've got another 1985 GT302 R. Those cars are one of 12 each. And then here in the back, we've got an M81 MSO kit wide body Mustang, again built by Summit Ford, the same people who built our black 85 Dominator GT. So today I'm going to walk you through some of the details of these cars, what makes them unique, and things to keep your eyes out for in case you might have one or find one out in the wild. So a quick history lesson. When the Fox Mustang came out in 1979, you could get that car with a 140 horsepower 5-liter 302 V8. And that platform proved to be very modifiable and proved to be a great street racing platform. And still today, Fox body Mustangs are some of the fastest cars on the street, especially with all the upgrades that people are doing to them. But back in the 80s, modifiers recognized that as well and started selling them tuned right from the dealership, ready to go. And so here on the left, we've got a 1986, which was the last year of the four-eyed Mustang, the square headlight Mustang, but the first year of electronic fuel injection. So this is an 86 Saleen Coupe, or one of roughly 201, 202 cars built. This is one of three built in dark shadow blue. This is a car that I chased for about 10 years and just got done restoring. We're still finishing the interior on it, but the outside has been completely restored. It's a full, this is a unibody car, so it's not a frame off, but it is a full restoration, top and bottom, all the way through the driveline. The car was completely stripped down and so completely restored. This car came out of South Carolina. Concord, I believe, is where it spent most of its life, but a very rare specification in the dark blue. You can see here that this is car number 121. And so some of the things that make a Saleen unique is the body kit that was designed by Steve Saleen based off of his racing career and a successful racing career at that. This car has 16-inch inky wheels on it. Some of these cars would also have Raikens, and early cars would have Hayashi racing wheels, what would become HRE. Also, you'll see the stripe kit down on the bottom that was part of all Saleen cars. It's got the racecraft suspension, so lower suspension, Coney red shocks on it, all as a part of the factory Saleen kit. The big ducktail spoiler in the back, and then because that spoiler replaced the factory spoiler on an 86, you'll see the high mount light there in the center that was an aftermarket unit that Steve Saleen installed on all of his cars. Inside, gauges say Saleen Mustang on them. Has a Momo steering wheel, again part of the package. The car number is going to be here on the console, and you'll see the special shift knob that these cars had, and then it says Steve or Saleen Mustang over there on the right hand side. Other than that, the interiors are pretty stock in these cars, but beautifully done. This car also had the Escort radar detector. This car also left where Steve Saleen was building these cars out in California. It left as a radio delete car. It was ordered that way from Ford and left the Saleen factory with no radio, so we've restored it that way. Next up is our 1985 Predator Mustang GT302 R. These cars were built in Kansas City and Dallas, Texas by a gentleman named Tom Solomon, who's still around today. He had the idea in 1983 to build a Shelby-looking Mustang with a 65 or 6 Shelby scoop on it. Similar style, stripes down the side as a 65 or 6 Mustang, Shelby Mustang. Factory roll bar, or a roll bar that was installed by Tom Solomon. Quite a few different wheel choices on this car. This car is an R model, which makes it super rare. It's one of 12 R models built in 1985. They built R models in 84 and 85. This is an 85, so one of 12. It's car number 150. Bought this car about 15 years ago and had it completely concours restored as well. The original owner spec'd the centerline style racing wheels on it. A more common wheel on a Predator Mustang was a Carroll Shelby 14-inch wheels, so we've got an extra set of those here. And then if you take a look up on our lift, this is one of our next restoration candidates. This is a 1985 Predator GT302 R with the Carroll Shelby wheels on it. This particular car was sold new here in Austin. It was black and gold. I've had some communication with the original owner and have some pictures of the car back when it was new, so we're excited to get that one restored at some point. Still has its fiberglass hood on it, which was a unique piece for the R model. Still has the aluminum underdrive pulleys that again was a part of the R model package, so really neat car. These cars were sold new again in Dallas and in Kansas City, or sorry, that's where they were manufactured. They were sold in about 20 dealerships across the U.S., mostly in the Midwest and some up into the Rocky Mountains, down into Texas. Didn't really make it as far as the East Coast or the West Coast, but very unique looking cars. Because of the roll bar and just kind of the ambiance with these cars, many of them were raced really hard. Generally when you find them, they're in the shape that our black one is on top of the lift, but it makes it even more exciting to find one, to be able to locate it, to restore it, and to get it back on the road. They built about 135 cars in 1985. Again, about 130 to 135 in 1984. They built 27 cars in 1986, and there were 6 cars, either 6 or 8 in 1983. So a grand total of maybe 250 to 300 cars. 85 is one of my favorite years. I love the mail slot grille. I just think that the 85s and 86s have the kind of the best looking front ends to me, and so that's always been my favorite. And this car is unique in that it's the only blue R model built. We've got a full video on YouTube if you want to get super into the details on how to identify these cars and what to look for. Okay, so in the middle here we've got our 1985 Mustang Dominator GT. So these cars were produced from about 1982 through roughly 1988 to 1989. They were all built at Summit Ford in Lee Summit, Missouri. The owner of the dealership there liked high performance cars, liked fast Torinos. They were a big dealer for the Twister Specials back in the day, and in 1985 when Twister Specials were sold new, Kansas City was kind of a hotbed for Fox body tuning and drag racing. So the Predator Mustangs were built in Kansas. The Dominator Mustangs were built and sold in Kansas. You would find a lot of hot Fox body Mustangs running around the Kansas City area. So Lee Summit Ford had the idea to build these cars. They have a functional 1982 GT scoop on them, so I'll show you that in a second. The underside of the hood's been cut out and sealed into the air cleaner. Depending on the year of car you have, it would have had long tube headers. This car is an 85, and so it's got long tube headers that are actually cut and welded into the factory Y pipe. Being an 85, they still had to be emissions compliant, and so that was the way that they were able to accomplish that. This car is really well preserved. We bought it from the second owner who had it since 1986. It's got 26,000 original miles on it. It's in very nice shape. Black over gray. And you can see that the interior on this car is just immaculate. Original buzzer still works as well. They didn't do anything to these interior-wise. They would get the Dominator sticker on the fender. That was applied a little bit crooked from the factory. They were moving fast. That's just the way that it was done. And then here on the trunk lid. So outside of some go fast goodies under the hood, these cars were pretty stock, but they ran pretty hard. There were a few 1982 and 1983 cars built that had very hot engines in them, but the EPA got wind of that and shut it down. And so by 84, 85, most of the cars were fairly stock, again, except for the ram air and the long tube Hooker Super Competition headers. Also at Summit Ford, so at Summit Ford, the 1982 GT launch, they had Jackie Stewart at the dealership, and as part of that launch with Jackie Stewart, they had some of the Ford M81 race cars that were running IMSA at the time. And so there were 11 M81 cars built from the factory. I believe 10 of those were 4-cylinder. One was called the GT Enduro, and it was a V8. But Ford also had a manufacturer special order program where you could order that wide body kit and have that installed at a dealership. So this car here is called the Mirage. This was built at Summit Ford alongside this Dominator. It's a 1983, but it took the Ford dealership 2 years to complete the car, so they didn't sell it until 1985. All of the fiberglass front end, the fenders, the rear quarter panels, the rear spoiler, all very difficult to install, so it took their body shop many years to complete this car. By the time it was ready for sale, this car was about 30 to 40 less horsepower than the new 85 GTs that were sitting on the lot, so it was a little bit tough to sell. It was also extremely expensive. This car is as we found it. We're in the process of building a set of kind of period correct Southern Ways or Epsilon wheels that will go on it that are deep dish as the car would have come from the factory. What I've been told about this car was that it was so expensive and took them so long to do that they opted not to order the correct BBS E51s that would have been on the car, as they were just incredibly expensive at the time. So we've also sourced a set of those. We're going to build a set of Epsilons to run on the car. But this is how you see the car is how we found it. We believe that it was repainted at some point in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, with kind of this candy red paint job. The car was always red, but it appears to have been repainted. It's got some cool graphics work on the back. You can see here where it says Mirage by Summit Ford. We will preserve this car. We're not going to do a lot to it other than get it running and be able to get out and enjoy it. It's relatively low mileage as well, showing 34,000 miles. The interior, other than a rip in the seat, is in really good shape. Netted headrests. Car's been stored inside most of its life. One cool thing is that it was shown at the 29th annual Darryl Starbird's National Rod and Custom Show in Kansas City. If anybody's ever seen pictures of this car back in the day, I would absolutely love to see that. I think it was shown quite a bit in the Kansas City area when it was new. So as part of the M81 wide body kit from Ford, the MSO kit, you got a new front fascia integrated into wide fenders. Those wide fenders blend all the way back into the door, and then back behind the door they integrate into the quarter panel, all the way back to the end of the quarter panel with this integrated scoop or spoiler, and that spoiler then gets integrated into the trunk lid. So quite a comprehensive kit to install. So the Saleen has a stock 1986 5-liter. This was the first year for Ford fuel injection on the 5-liter Mustang, or for the sequential fuel injection. You could actually get, if you bought an 84 or 5 automatic car, it would have what's called CFI. 86 was the first year. with the big intake plenum that we kind of know Fox bodies for. So you can see here the car's been restored and detailed in the engine bay. This has all been taken apart, relatively stock, but if you've ever driven one of these 5-liter Mustangs, you know that they're pretty sprightly and pretty fun to drive. So move over to the Dominator, you'll see some of the tricks that they did with these Dominators. And so bottom of the hood is cut out as part of the Dominator package, and what they did was just installed a garage seal right along the perimeter of the air cleaner and then drilled these holes to basically create a ram air effect. These cars also got Hooker long tube headers, and the flanges of those headers are cut off and welded into the 1985 Y pipe that ran into a single catalytic converter and then out to the exhaust. 1985 cars have a dual into single back into dual exhaust setup, so as part of just EPA regulations they had to do that on these cars. Some of the very early cars, 82s and 83s, could have had hotter motors and different exhaust setups. Some of the Dominator GTs will also have the Ford racing ignition module, so you'll see that in some of the cars. Some of them will also have the 140 mile an hour speedometer, so those are things to keep an eye out for if you're looking for a Dominator GT. And then as we move over to the Predator, some changes again. Saleen would install the Cobra valve covers if your car was a Cobra package, and so you would know that if it has the Cobra down here below the snake emblem, it's a Cobra package car, and so that means that it would get the Powered by Ford Cobra valve covers kind of right from the dealership or from Saleen. They also had an open element air cleaner. Right now we're missing the sticker. I need to apply that. The other thing that's not installed on the car at the moment is the Monte Carlo bar that would stretch across and connect the two strut towers together. And then you can see here the data tag, the Saleen data tag identifying it as a Predator and which car number it is. One of the cool things with these R models is that they're a fiberglass hood. If you have a non-R model Predator, it has a normal sheet metal hood, but it will be cut out underneath with an 65, 66 Shelby scoop attached to it. And then again, being an R model, this car also has the underdrive pulley setup on it. Pretty trick stuff for 1985. Okay, so as you can see, we're pretty passionate about these rare four-eyed Fox body Mustangs. We love chasing them down, we love buying them, we love restoring them, especially the more uncommon and super cool ones. Let us know what you think of this video. If you learned something new today, let us know what it was. If you know where one of these cars is, or you've got one that you want to sell, we'd love to talk to you about it. Chris at lotsofvintage.com. That's with 2 T's, LOTTS, of vintage.com. Comment below, let us know what you thought of this video, let us know what questions you have, and let us know what type of content you'd like to see next. Looking forward to the next one.